And it's a female again. Oh, god damn. Oh my freaking god, I did it twice in a row. Hey, here's the bet. What's going to happen first? Am I going to catch Arceus or are you going to get Feebas? So since I first picked up Pokemon back when I was about, I don't know, let's say 4-ish, I've spent near enough my whole life playing these games and somehow never actually tried to catch them all. So screw it, 20 years later, I'm finally going to do it. I'm going to catch one of every Pokemon and create my own living Dex. Now you've definitely seen a video like this before. The only difference with this one is I hate myself so much for some odd reason that I really wish I could explain. Long and short of it, basic rules of a living Dex that you probably already know is that you have to have one of each Pokemon stored in a box. Nice and simple. The way I'd know if I'd done it or not is to deposit every Pokemon I collected into Pokemon Home and see if I could redeem the exclusive original form again. That sounds easy enough. Which is apparently what I thought when I looked at 905 Pokemon I had to collect. So, I added a couple extra rules to make it more interesting for myself. Now, something I've pretty much always done since I saw a random post back in like 2007-ish is to collect all my Pokemon in basic Pokeballs where I can. That's basically just because I saw it as part of an Ash Ketchum challenge and thought, yeah, that sounds fun, I guess. And to add further fuel to that fire, the other main addition is that I'm going to catch a male version of each Pokemon where possible. The only explanation I've got for this one is that my kid brain kept calling Pokemon guys, dudes, and it was just easier for me to only catch guys and dudes, so I was technically never wrong. I swear I'm almost done, just a couple smaller restrictions to point out. I've completed the Pokedex in most of the games I'm going to need to use, but because I personally don't trust Nintendo, Game Freak, Ilka, whoever to maintain Pokemon Home, I'm going to be catching, breeding and evolving a fresh batch of Pokemon for the living Dex. Oh, and I'm going to be trying to do all this before Scarlet and Violet release. Considering I'm starting this around mid-October, I'm going to be cutting it close to say the least. Just to make things even easier for myself, I'm also going to be trying to get as many extra variations towards my form Dex as possible as a little bonus challenge on top. You'll just have to wait until the end of the video to see how much that helps. When I was planning how I was even going to start something like this, I decided that the bulk of my living Dex was going to come from 2 games. One being Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, since I've already completed the Pokedex and it's only missing 5 Pokemon from the first 4 generations, so it kind of covers a large chunk without many gaps. The second, Sword and Shield, which will fill in the majority of Pokemon past Gen 4. This includes the DLC obviously, since they added new legendaries and made some rarer Pokemon easier to get. The last Switch title we'll need is Legends Arceus. I'd like to say this is just for the new Hisuian forms, but I am going to have to complete the main and post game just for a single Pokemon. Unfortunately, I'm also going to need to use Pokemon Go for a whopping 3 Pokemon, 2 of which you can probably guess who they are already. The remaining Pokemon that aren't available in these games, I'll have to go all the way back to some DS titles to catch them, breed them, and even dabble in a little bit of time travel to claim some event-specific Pokemon. Specifically, the games I'm going to be using for this are White, White 2, XY, Omega Ruby, and Ultra Sun. With all that out the way, let's get on with possibly the most exciting video you've ever seen about someone completing a living Dex. Alright, so I might have lied right off the bat. The first and questionably one of the worst decisions I made during the challenge was to start by breeding any of the Pokemon which I already had the final evolutions for. This is because I have about 5 hours of footage that's just me, dropping Pokemon off in the daycare, cycling up and down the same route until eggs appear, collecting the eggs, cycling up and down the same route again until they hatch, boxing the hatched Pokemon, collecting and boxing the Pokemon I used to breed, Then rinse and repeat the process for a good chunk of the 488 Pokemon available in these games. And this isn't even counting the amount of times I had to collect additional eggs from the daycare man, just because they hatched into the female version of the Pokemon I was looking for. Which is fine for Pokemon that are only female, like the Chansey and Jinx lines. But while I stream this, my living Dex did get nicknamed the Sexist Dex, because I'd get more and more frustrated if I knew the Pokemon wasn't gender locked, but it still wasn't hatching a male for me. And it's a female again. Oh god damn. I swear this is a 50-50. I'm gonna go insane. Oh, it's a male. I can move on from Kecleon. For anyone curious, I did breed all these Pokemon with a foreign Ditto, because my Dex may seem sexist, but it's definitely not racist. This did mean that I managed to hatch a shiny Paras while doing this whole endeavour. Fun fact though, I did almost release it because I wasn't paying full attention. The Paras was female, and its shiny is so close to the original that I didn't even notice in time to hit the capture button to get footage for the video. Eventually, I did start searching for Pokemon rather than hatching them, unless they had stupidly low spawn rates, which sped up the process a ton. And it also led to my next shiny being Poliwag. Funnily enough, like Paras, I almost didn't realise it was shiny since it was dusk in game, and it also happened to be the first Poliwag I'd encountered that session, so I had no point of reference for what a normal Poliwag looked like. Thankfully the sparkles gave it away though. This may be in the faster method, but it did also have its moments, like when I was trying to catch a Gabite, but the thing just didn't want to stay in the Pokeball. Because I've got a Gibble and I'm doing a living Dex, I don't mind getting Gabites now, because I've got the base form. It just means I've got to do less evolutions later. If this one's male. The English and Japanese trailers and one clearly look better. Yeah, it does not help that. Oh, wait. Yeah, as soon as you said it, it went in. You might have noticed that I've been mainly focusing on the base forms for each evolution line. That's because somewhere in my infinite wisdom, when I was planning this out, I thought it'd be quicker to grind the Pokemon from level 1 until they evolve in the underground, rather than the clearly better way of catching them at a higher level, or they evolved. Now, given that I'd already started with the breeding method, and I'm a bit too stubborn for my own good, I just cracked on with loading Pokemon into my party, leveling them up, and swapping them out with the next Pokemon that needed evolving. The only thing that I had to do to not slow the whole process down was literally just not press the B button. You'd think this would be easy, and for the most part you'd be right, but that's only true if you're paying attention and you're not as impatient as I am, which revealed a subconscious love for Sasuke that I apparently have. You'll show people and be like, oh, how long did that take you to get? And they'll be like, you'll tell them how many hatches and how many hours. And I'll be like, oh, why'd you do that? That's stupid. And then you just show them that clip of me just hitting B for all the Pokemon that try and evolve. Technically, all playing the same game, we're just not playing it together. Oh my friggin' god, I did it twice in a row. I hate myself so much. Like, what's your favourite colour? Why is the sky blue? What's your favourite Pokemon? Where are you going tonight? And then you ask them, like, the question where they're like, who's your favourite son? If you're talking to your mum and dad or something, I don't know. Then you get the real answers. If you were to do that to me now, it's fully be like, who's your favourite Pokemon? I'd be like, Sasuke! Now I'm making out that it was hard, but it was more a test of endurance than anything. Especially when I was coming to the end of the Gen 4 leg of the Dex and only had the higher level Pokemon to evolve. But with them done and boxed, I was finished with Gen 4. Kind of. I'm actually going to pick up a couple of Mythicals before I'm done with these games. And these are going to be in Floweroma Town of all places. That's because if you have a save file from Let's Go Pikachu or Eevee, which is arguably all these games are good for, then you'll be able to pick up a gift Mew from a woman to the west side of the town. In the same way, there's also a gift Jirachi available for you if you've got a save file from Sword or Shield from the man standing next to her. And in a completely unrelated note, you can also pick up a Shaymin in these games since they released the Oaks Letter mystery gift item. This meant that after you finish the main game, you can go back through Victory Road and open up the Seabreak Path, which leads to the Flower Paradise where you can catch Shaymin. Now, I'm not sure if you've been paying attention, but I'm a bit impatient. So before the event was released, I decided to hop on my magical flying barrel, perform a biblical miracle, and have a nice relaxing jog up to meet Shaymin instead. Casual blasphemy aside, that's the first 4 generations pretty much done, putting me at 486 Pokemon altogether with the extra legendaries I caught during different playthroughs. And 8 extra forms towards a bonus goal as well. And for those curious, the extra forms were the 3 types of Burmy and Wormadam, as well as the gender variants of Hippopotas and Harpardon. You might think the gender variations go against one of the goals though, but as long as I have the male variant first, I honestly don't care. But if you're the kind of person that does, leave a comment, I guess? Moving on to Legends Arceus, there's not much that needs to be done honestly, at least numbers wise, but that's something I'll touch on in a second. For now, let's just go over the Pokemon that are exclusive to this game, which are mainly the noble Pokemon from each region. The first being Weirdia, who evolves from Stantler after using Psy-Shield Bash 20 times, but don't forget that has to be the Agile style specifically. Not too bad, just a bit time consuming. Next is a little simpler and it's Kleavor. I just need to find a black Augurite and then use it like a normal evolution stone on a Scyther in order for it to evolve. But they thought that was too easy, so for Ursaluna, you need to find and use a Peep Block on an Ursaring, but only under full moon, otherwise your Ursaring will full on pull a Pikachu and just refuse to evolve. If you're following the pattern here, then it shouldn't be a surprise that Basculegion's next, and it also shouldn't be a surprise that it's got a stupidly convoluted evolution method as well. It has to take 294 points of recoil damage specifically, without fainting, before it decides it wants to pass on, evolve. And I have to do this twice because like the modern day version of Basculin, it has different colour variants, which I think are big enough to consider separate forms, so I'm going to be adding them to my decks as well. The next is everyone's favourite regional evolution, Sneasler, which actually isn't too hard to get. Like Weavile, it needs a Razor Claw to evolve, but unlike Weavile, you just need to use it during the day instead of the night. It does beg the question as to why it doesn't work in the modern games from a lore point of view, but I'm not paid enough overall to think about that. Now these next 2 aren't noble Pokemon, and one of them is a bane of my existence for more than a couple reasons. But starting off nicely, there's Overquill. Similar to Weirdia, you need to use Strong Style Barbarage 20 times before it'll finally evolve. Now for all the previous Pokemon, I've just caught them on a save where I'd already completed the game and Pokedex. But like I said at the start, I wanted to catch new versions of each Pokemon. And if you've been paying attention, that means I'm going to have to catch Enamorus, which, from a best effort, takes around 12 hours to finish a full playthrough with the post game in order to get up to the point where you can catch the Weather Genies and Enamorus, which you can see here and here, because yes, I hate myself enough that I played through the game twice, since all of the genies have the Therian forms, which count towards my bonus challenge. Lastly, sort of, I want to do some cleanup from the Gen 4 Mythicals. This meant taking a Buizel, Mantike, a Quillfish with huge spikes, also known as the Overquill I evolved earlier, to a specific point in the Cobalt Coastlands, which will activate an event where you can catch Manaphy and 3 Phione, that up until now were just lost to time. Another mythical that was just lost to time until now is Darkrai. Similar to how Mew and Jirachi work in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, all you need to do is have a save from BDSP on your profile, then after you finish the main story, you'll unlock a special request, which is basically just a fancy way to tell you to go and catch it in the Coronet Highlands. If you also happen to have a save from Sword and Shield on your profile, you'll unlock another special request for Shaymin. And yes, I already have Shaymin, but it's not in its Sky form, so while it's here, I'm going to pick it up as a bonus for my challenge. Speaking of the bonus challenge, to make my life a bit easier, I'm not going to be counting any of the new Pokemon in this section towards the overall count, because if I try to keep track of them, it's just going to get too messy. Also, I'm probably just going to get the modern day versions of them anyway, so it's a bit pointless. On that note, the most surprising of these, until I paid closer attention to it, was Basculin. That's because unlike the modern day version or Basculegion, it only has one form in Hisui, which is a unique white striped version with a less stubby nose. Other than that, there's the more straightforward regional variants that we've come to know, which are Typhlosion, Samurott, Decidueye, Growlithe, Arcanine, Voltorb, Electrode, Quillfish, Sneasel, Lilligant, Zoroark, Zoroark, Braviary, Sliggoo, Goodra, and Avalugg. And with those Pokemon caught and added to the Dex, that brings the total up by a whopping 13 to 499 Pokemon. Pushing us just past halfway, but again, that's not counting anything past Gen 4 because my poor little brain just can't deal with that right now. A bit more satisfying though, is the bonus challenge total. It's gone up from a measly 8 forms to 29, and I caught all the unknown forms, so let's just double that straight to 56. There's not much to show for these next games unfortunately, mainly because I don't have a 3DS capture card, but I can't skip them because the Pokemon I'm going to have to get from them aren't available on a Switch game, at least so far. And it's actually quite a mess, so I'm going to try my best to sum it all up in as neat a way as possible, which means I'm going to have to go over the last little bit of cleanup for Gen 4. For this, we're going to cover 3 Pokemon. 2 of them are legendaries, and 1 is just a normal Pokemon. Literally, it's just a normal type, and it's Spinda of all things. If I flick through the boxes on the Brilliant Diamond save I used for the first half of this challenge, you might notice a lonely Spinda on its own in a seemingly random box. This is because, for some reason, in Ilka's Infinite Wisdom, you can catch Spinda in Brilliant Diamond or Shining Pearl, but you can't transfer into Pokemon Home. The reason this is so stupid, for those who don't know, is that Ilka are also the developers of Pokemon Home, so this one company can't make 2 games that work together, but seem to work perfectly well with a game released back in 2017 on a previous generation console using a separate Pokemon storage app that wasn't even developed by them. That doesn't sound ridiculous, I don't know what does. But ranting aside, the 2 legendaries we need require a little less work. Emphasis on little though. Basically, we're still missing Celebi and Deoxys, which actually have a few viable methods for obtaining. Celebi is actually quite a relatively rare mythical Pokemon in terms of giveaway events. The most consistent way of catching a Celebi that I've found is to use a 3DS eShop version of Crystal to catch a GS Ball event Celebi, which I did happen to buy just before the 3DS eShop went offline, so it was an option. And for Deoxys, the only way I can think of to repeatedly catch one without going back in time to when the event happened and doing it multiple times using different saves on different cartridges is to complete the Delta episode post-game story added in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. But the quicker method for both is to actually go back in time, sort of. You've probably heard of something called the DNS Exploit, which, to oversimplify a complicated subject, is where you connect to someone's version of the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, where they've re-enabled all of the event distributions for all of the Generation 4 and 5 games. That's about as much as I'm going to go over, but if you're curious, just Google it, stuff will come up. As long as you can read, you'll be good. But back to it. By using it, I could get Celebi and Deoxys without having to complete 2 games, which is obviously a lot quicker, especially when you're planning to go after all 4 forms of Deoxys. You can also get other mythicals like Victini and Meloetta, which have been so rarely distributed because Gen 5 arguably doesn't get much love from Game Freak at all. The 3 games I used for this were Heart Gold for Celebi, White for Victini and Meloetta, and White 2 for Deoxys. With this, now we're done with Gen 4. Kind of. There were some I had to get in more legitimate ways. Most of them were simple and I just had to go to the place and catch the thing essentially. And I did this with 2 Blitzel, evolving 1 into Zebstrika, and 3 Tynamo, evolving 1 into Electric, and the other all the way into Electros. Dealin's also available in White, and like you've probably guessed by now, I'm going to be catching all 4 seasonal forms for it and its evolution source book. because as good as these games are, I didn't want to come back to them to do anything else. Moving on to X and Y, I'm going to start with one of the very few times that past me has actually been good to future me. I can't tell you why, but Kid Me collected all of the starters from every generation up to that point. So instead of going back to Gen 5 and start on multiple playthroughs, I just had to breed the Snivy, Tepig and Oshawott lines that were already there. That even included what was at the time the current generation starters, Chespin, Fennekin and Froakie, which again saved a ton of time from me restarting saves. Then there were more of the go here, catch the thing Pokemon, which consisted of Patrat, Watchog, Pansage, Simisage, Pansear, Simisear, Pampor, Simipour, Swaddle, Swadloon, Leavanny, Ducklet, Swanna, Skidoo, Go-Go and Alomomola. And obviously we can't forget the elusive I hate myself, give me all the forms Pokemon, which involved both gender variations of Litleo and Pyroar, all 5 colours of Flabebe, Floa and Florges. Fun side note, I managed to get a shiny full odds Ducklet while I was searching for the white flower Flabebe. Just saying. Not to mention Scatterbug, Spupa and all 20 patterns of Vivillon. To get all of them, I bought a copy of Pokemon Y to use as a fresh save. Basically taught myself how to speedrun the start of Gen 6. Set up a second 3DS with my main save on Pokemon X, and after I caught a Scatterbug, I'd trade it over, reset the save, change the console's region, rinse and repeat. This got me most of the patterns, along with luckily a couple that I already had from giveaways that happened years ago, those being the Pokeball and Fancy pattern forms. The only thing I had left to do was go on the GTS and look for the few patterns I was missing that required a Japanese or American 3DS to get. For the most part, this wasn't actually all that hard since I usually just had to get extras of the patterns that people were looking for that I already had. What was an absolute pain to do though was collecting all the Fufrou trims. I could get the untrimmed Fufrou easily enough, but if you give them a trim and transfer them into Pokemon Bank, they revert back to their untrimmed form. The only way to actually get all of its trims into Pokemon Home is to transfer them in from probably my least favourite entry in the series, Pokemon Go. Or, and hear me out, you could load all of your spare legendaries into Pokemon Home and constantly search the GTS every day for trims that aren't looking for Enamorus or Pokemon that physically can't exist unless they've been hacked in. So that's exactly what I did for all 9 trims, and I wouldn't recommend doing it to anyone. But my luck did turn around when I noticed that I had a Diancie registered in my Pokemon X's Pokedex. The downside was that it was nowhere to be found in my team or PC boxes. Fair to say, I was getting slightly worried that I'd somehow lost it, since there's only a limited number of legitimate Diancie actually out there, and even less that people would be willing to trade away. It turns out I actually traded it up to my copy of Omega Ruby, because that was the only way, back in the day, to get a Diancie to Mega Evolve your Diancie. I even found my event Hoopa on the save in its Unbound form, which I learned had to actually be traded up to Ultra Sun or Moon, so that it'd keep its Unbound form when you placed it into the PC and transferred it into Pokemon Bank. On the topic of Ultra Sun and Moon, this is actually the first generation, including the originals, that I started completing the Pokedex and shiny hunting Pokemon. No reason to point this out specifically, just a fun fact. Well, I guess it did mean breeding, catching and evolving was easier for Rowlet, Dartrix, Decidueye, Popplio, Brionne, Primarina, Litten, Torracat, Incineroar, Pick-a-Peck, Trumbeak, Toucan, Yungoos, Gumshoos, Crabrawler, Crabominable, Kamala and Bruxish. With a few of the more notable Pokemon being the 4 styles of Oricorio, which I just ended up catching the Pom-Pom style 4 times and changing 3 of the forms with the different nectars from the other islands. Minior was another one because its cores have different colours, and you can't tell until it's at low health. It even gets more fun after you realise there's a decent chance it'll knock itself out. So the best method I found personally was to catch everyone until you have all the colours of the rainbow. Simple as that. We're on the home straight now because all that's left are gift Pokemon pretty much. The one everyone knows and you've probably already guessed is Magearna, since you just need to scan a QR code in Sun or Moon after you beat the Elite Four, which activates an event where you gifted a Magearna in an antique shop. A bit random if you take it out of context, but hey, that's what Game Freak decided to do. And lastly, Pikachu. and Pikachu, 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 and Pikachu. All 8 Pikachu were in different versions of Ash's hat from the different series. Why or how I have them, I can't remember for the life of me, but they definitely count as different forms, so they're being transferred into Pokemon Home with the rest of the Pokemon for that reason. The total after all that is up to 574 Pokemon out of 905, with 68 forms towards the bonus goal, putting it at 122 altogether. With all that done, it's time to move on to Pokemon Go, which I've already mentioned, but it's worth stating again, is definitely my favourite core Pokemon game ever made. No need to fact check that. The only way to actually get all of its trims into Pokemon Home is to transfer them in from probably my least favourite entry in the series, Pokemon Go. Thankfully, this is only a shorter venture since I only need to get Meltan and Melmetal. Meltan, I can get just by opening a box and they literally appear right in front of me. Then I just catch another one that I can evolve with only 400 candies. Why does it take 400 candies to evolve Meltan? You can only get like 40 candies a day, and you can only open the mystery box every 3 days. This is why it's the worst. So I finally got Melmetal. That's all I'll say. Let's just move on to a better game. Oh, and that's an extra 2 Pokemon to add to the total, so I guess we're at 576. Okay, so technically I don't have to play Let's Go Eevee at all, but, and I have a reason for this, and you've guessed it already, I hate myself and I just want to suffer. Oh, and it's a simplest way to get the Alolan form, so we're gonna treat it like a fun little side quest. I just have to catch the Cantonian versions of each Pokemon with an Alolan form, then trade with all the different NPCs to get the regional variants for myself. To be honest, that was actually quite easy, although compared to the game that shall not be named, anything seems easy. That side quest did get me 18 extra forms towards the bonus challenge, pushing the total to 150. Putting it at almost a whole Gen 1 Pokedex of just forms. It's been a while, so let me give you a quick reminder of another one of the extra challenges I set myself. I'm trying to do this all before Scarlet and Violet are released, and we're coming pretty close now because it's the 5th of November, and they release on the 18th. That only leaves 13 days to catch 329 Pokemon from 4 generations, and it can't be that hard considering that only 51 of those are legendaries and mythicals. Well, here we go again. There's going to be a couple different ways that I'm going to have to use to get all of them. The first of which being the Dynamax adventures. The kicker for this is that I already spent my time hunting down mysterious shards in the walls of the Grand Underground of BDSP. So going into it, I already have 20 of 57 available legendaries in the Dynamax adventures. You might think because of this, I can skip a fair few of them if I spot them, but the adventures are only sort of random. Basically, the game will never give you a repeat legendary until you've caught all of the available options. So if I catch a Pokemon that I already have from BDSP, then it takes them out of the rotation, and that's on top of the fact that you can't just abandon raids. So the time between finishing and failing raids isn't all that different. Cracking on with the first day, because spoiler alert, this did take more than a day, I caught Suicune and Latias. This doesn't seem like a lot, and that's because it's not, especially when none of them add to the total, although it was also the same day that I just finished the previous games, so I think I get a bit of slack there. On to the second day though, I got Moltres, Mewtwo, Raikou, Entei, Kyogre, Azelf, Giratina, Cresselia, Kyurem, Tapu Bulu, Tapu Koko, and Tapu Fini. Fair to say I made up some ground here, although again, a fair chunk of these were Pokemon I already had, so it actually only adds 4 to the total. Oh, and there was a shiny Lugia that I encountered when I decided to do one last raid before I headed off to bed. Doesn't count to the total, but I'm not going to turn down one of my favourite shiny legendaries. After that, it's fair to say I was quite motivated to do some more adventures the next day. I'd somehow forgotten how good the odds were of encountering shinies while doing this. I did not find any more shiny Pokemon. On the third day, Arceus made the land, sea and sky. I made a bad joke and I caught Zapdos, Rayquaza, Palkia, Heatran, Yveltal, Zygarde, which is probably the hardest legendary in the Dynamax adventures, given that it has 2 moves that hit everyone, and it regains health once it transforms into its complete form. Tapu Lele and Lunala. So that's another 4 for the Dex, and it rounds off the Tapus. I actually ended up subjecting myself to Zygarde 3 more times while organising the video, just so I could collect its additional forms. Now you might be noticing the lack of Ultra Beasts, and so was I. Apparently on the save I was using, I hadn't finished all the paths in the Crown Tundra, and this meant I hadn't opened up the final quest that actually lets them appear. So there'll be a few legendaries that aren't from the dens in the day's mix. Those being Galarian Articuno, Galarian Zapdos, Galarian Moltres, Cantonian Articuno, Uxie, Mesprit, Terrakion, Virizion, Cobalion, Keldeo, and Zekrom. That's 3 extra forms with the Galarian beds, 4 new legendaries, and Keldeo, which is a mythical, but now it's not. I don't know. If you do know the pattern in the Crown Tundra though, you might be wondering where the new Reggies are. And you'd be right to be curious, since the only reason I didn't transfer the one I got from this playthrough is purely because I knew I'd have to do more than just one complete run. That also means I'd have to catch one of the new Reggies twice, regardless of what I did. Moving on to the next day, you be the judge of whether what I did had an effect, because I caught Nihilego, Buzzwole, Kartana, Stakataka, Blacephalon, Xurkitree, Celesteela, Guzzlord, Pheromosa, Claypole, and Necrozma. Yeah, I think it made a difference. I had a whole day of just catching Ultra Beasts. I went from no Ultra Beasts to all of them within a day. After having a solid day that added what I'm reluctantly going to call legendary Pokemon to the total, we're on to the 5th day. This was also the day I was getting fairly tired of doing Dynamax adventures, so I thought I'd take a break by playing through the entirety of Gen 8 and its DLCs. Turns out that's not a small task, and it took me about 12 hours, even using a level 100 starter from the beginning of the game. By doing this, it did end up getting me Zamazenta, Eternatus, Urshifu Single Strike Form, Regieleki, Glastria, and Calyrex. With that done, I transferred them into home, bumped the total up by 6, and got onto some more adventures the next day. Or at least that was my intention. I caught nothing, since I was putting every spare minute I had into the challenge, and it was around my birthday when people expect me to be more social and not just seclude myself to my room and play Pokemon all day. I actually ended up taking a break. Back at it the next day. Progress obviously slowed down a bit because of this, but I still squeezed in some time over the next couple of days so I could try and keep up some momentum. Catching Kubfu, Naganadel, Cosmog, Cosmoem, Ho-Oh, Latios, Groudon, Xerneas, and Reshiram. After easing myself back into things and up the total by 6 Pokemon, I was only one Dynamax Adventure Legendary away from never needing to do another one ever again. It also brings me to my actual birthday, where I somehow managed to catch Solgaleo. Rounding off this section of Pokemon, I'm moving straight into another whole playthrough of the main story of Sword, just to catch Zacian. That's also not the last playthrough I'm going to have to do either, since I only bought the DLC for Shield. I'm going to have to do it all again to catch Urshifu Rapid Strike Form, Regidrago, and Spectria. Yep, that's right, 12 hours just for 3 whole Pokemon. Thankfully, that's the last of the legendaries caught, and I just have to transfer those along with the mythicals I'd collected from the various different events over the years, like Genesect, Volcanion, Hoopa Bound Form, Marshadow, Zeraora, a shiny Zeraora, Zarude, and Zarude Dardar Form. Which, adding these 5 new Pokemon onto the total, brings it to 620 species with 157 bonus forms. And for anyone keeping track, that's 3 full playthroughs of Gen 8 that I've had to do, 2 of those including both DLCs, and another hour of a playthrough where I just played up until I got a Kubfu that I didn't even mention. Now I can just get on to catching Pokemon normally and being totally relaxed in the run up to Scarlet and Violet. Oh no! And apparently I was so focused on getting this done that I actually forgot to record myself catching the rest of Generation 5 and 6. Luckily, nothing particularly interesting happened. I did get a few bonus forms towards the total though, including Unpheasant Male, Unpheasant Female, Basculin Red Stripe, which is only available in Shield, Basculin Blue Stripe, which is only available in Sword, Galarian Darumaka, Galarian Darmanitan, Galarian Yamask, Male Frillish, Female Frillish, Male Jellicent, Female Jellicent, a shiny Female Jellicent, not an extra form, but any excuse to point out the shiny I found. This is any excuse I'll take. Galarian Stunfisk, Male Meowstic, Female Meowstic, and a shiny Binnacle. Again, not an extra form, but any excuse is a good excuse. Although I did almost miss this one the same way as Poliwag, since it's not too far off its original colour, and I thought it was just a trick of the lighting in the Galamine. You might have noticed that it's now the 18th, which technically means I didn't make it before Scarlet and Violet released, but I ordered a physical copy. This means that I'm only able to play it when the shop opens at 9 in the morning. And for reference, it's currently 12:30. So with that in mind, am I going to be able to catch the last of the decks before I pick up my copies of Scarlet and Violet? Because as much as I wanted to finish this challenge, I was not going to let it stop me from playing these games as soon as possible. I guess we'll find out. The first Pokemon I'm looking for from the Alola region that I haven't already transferred up from the Gen 7 games is Cutiefly, and I guess I'm starting off on my best foot. I'm still going to catch a normal version, like the other shinies I've found so far, but it's still a nice surprise nonetheless. Straight on to the next Pokemon. You may know some of the forms for it, but according to the tracker I'm using, there's technically another form that some people might not even consider, this being the Rockruff line. Most people know the midday, midnight and dusk forms of Lycanroc, but what less people know is that you need a Rockruff that has the own tempo ability in order for it to evolve into its dusk form. And then what even less people know is that this isn't Rockruff's second or hidden ability, so you can't force it with an ability capsule or patches. The only way to get it reliably is to find a raid den in the Isle of Armor with a Rockruff in and hope it has the right ability. This is where the encounter dates on my Pokemon get very unreliable, since I had to do a fair few resets for different Pokemon and constantly forgot to reset it back to normal. For the rest of the generation, it was quite straightforward and short, since I only had to catch an extra 43 Pokemon to finish this section of the Dex. There were 2 type nulls that I had to collect, but I've finished the main story of these games so many times at this point that I just went in and collected ones that were literally just standing there waiting for me. And I also made fast friends with one of them, so it'd evolve into Silvally, only to immediately shove it straight into a box, never to see the light of day ever again. That actually took me about 3 hours still, and left me at 3:50 AM, only 4 hours and 10 minutes left until I had to go and pick up my copies of Scarlet and Violet. It was getting a bit much, so I took a bit of a breather here before starting the last stretch of the challenge. So I actually started the Galadex at about 4:18 AM, and I wasn't going to waste 2 minutes just to get the funny number. I started off by breeding 3 starters to get the base forms, ready to be evolved, and I left them that way because I thought it'd be a nice way to round off the decks. Other than that, I just had to do the usual that had become my life at this point, and by that I mean look up where or how to get the Pokemon I need, go do the thing, put it in a box, rinse and repeat. And as per usual, I'm going to just try and cover some of the more interesting Pokemon I collected. The first being Applin, who was fairly simple, but I did have to transfer one to the other game and evolve it into Flapple, since its evolution item, the Tart Apple, is exclusive to Sword, where Appleton's item, the Sweet Apple, is exclusive to Shield. Toxtricity is an interesting one, since the form it has changes depending on its original nature. This meant not only looking for male Toxels, but also hoping they have the correct nature, otherwise I'd just have to release them and catch more until it did, which eventually happened. Moving not too much further down the decks, there's Sinistea and Poltergeist. The gimmick with these Pokemon is fairly well known, and it's a tiny stamp that makes up a minor difference between the phony and antique forms. The odds to find one of these in the Glimwood Tangle, where I decided to hunt for this, are 11% just to get a Sinistea to appear, and then 1 in 11 for it to have an authenticity stamp on the bottom, and I had to do this twice. After a few more catches, it was getting real close to the deadline I'd set myself. At this point, I caved and took a save fetch that I needed from one of the saves I already had, since technically I still had another one on my original save safe and sound, so it didn't really go against the rules and it saved a bit of time. Alchemy was the next Pokemon that had me jumping through extra hoops since I needed a sweet from the Battle Cafe in order to evolve Milcery. Not that hard, but time was short for these types of things to start happening. And I was starting to stress a little bit, not gonna lie. Or I just didn't know what to do since I hadn't slept for almost 24 hours at this point. Cracking on regardless, I caught Phalanx, Pincurchin, Snom and Frostmoth before I stopped and took way too much time trying to work out how I was going to finish this challenge in time. Unfortunately, the truth is I wouldn't. I did a quick check of how many Pokemon I had left to collect and realised straight away when I saw that I didn't have enough fossils that it wouldn't be possible. The last thing I did was to evolve the starter Pokemon, and then at 8:41 AM, I caught the challenge and went to collect the games I'd ordered. Which, if you're curious, ran just about as well as I felt, and Fuecoco encapsulated my mood perfectly. We'd fallen short by only 15 Pokemon, which is annoying because there are some clear things I could have done better and finished with time to spare. But as always, hindsight's 2020 and there's nothing I can do really. Except finish the challenge anyway, because I'm too close and I'm too stubborn to stop there. After taking the rest of the day to play Scarlet, I jumped on the next day to collect the last few Pokemon I needed to finish off the living decks I'd started. Starting off again, we caught Stonjourner, Ice-Q, both genders of Indeedee, Morpeko, Cuffant and Copperaja. From here, we reached a point that ultimately made me decide to call the challenge a first time, that being the fossils. I was actually only missing one Dino fossil, but in Shield, it's a 1% chance to drop when you use a Digging Duo, which is even more annoying. When I came back to it, it actually dropped quite quickly. That was frustrating, but also kinda nice, so I'll take my wins where I can get them. And it meant I could carry on with the last leg of the deck sooner, collecting Dracozolt, Arctozolt, Dracovish, Arctovish, Duraludon, Dreepy, which, just for anyone who might be looking for a Dreepy, don't do what I did. Find a Dracloak and breed for a Dreepy. It's way quicker than hoping for the 2% random encounter in a thunderstorm. Which, speaking of, we also caught Dracloak and Dragapult, finishing up the Galadex. Okay, maybe not if you've been paying attention, but we'll quickfire some of the bonus forms I didn't mention along the way before we get to that. Those forms being Galarian Meowth, its regional evolution Berserker, Galarian Ponyta, Galarian Rapidash, Galarian Slowpoke, Galarian Slowbro, Galarian Slowking, Galarian Farfetch'd, Galarian Weezing, Galarian Mr. Mime, its regional evolution Mr. Rhyme, Galarian Corsola, its regional evolution Cursula, Galarian Zigzagoon, Galarian Linoon, its regional evolution Obstagoon, Rotom in all its forms, those being Fan, Fridge, Oven, Mower and Washer, and lastly Runerigus, the Pokemon created purely because Game Freak made a name that went against its own guidelines. This is the point where you'd expect me to say we'd caught every Pokemon and take a look at our bonus goal, but then I'd know you hadn't paid enough attention. There's a single Pokemon left that I haven't caught yet because an event that wasn't released in the original games over 15 years ago was finally distributed in its remakes in March 2022, which, if you remember back near the start of the video, I actually hinted at it. But with them done and boxed, I was finished with Gen 4. Kind of. Not that one. With this, now we're done with Gen 4. Kind of. That's the one. If you've got a completed Save of Legends Arceus on your profile, then when you return to your home after the credits in BDSP, you'll find an Azure Flute waiting in your bedroom next to your TV. This is the item that reveals the staircase that leads you to Arceus, but I've already collected this in my save of Brilliant Diamond. Thankfully, I have also finished the save of Shining Pearl that still hasn't picked the item up yet. So I grabbed it, climbed Mount Coronet, played the magical blue flute thing, ascended the glowing staircase that just appeared out of thin air, and prepped myself to catch Arceus. And surprise, surprise, Arceus isn't easy to catch, especially when you're only using Pokeballs. Arceus has a base catch rate of 3, which for reference, Pidgey's base catch rate is 255. But there's a secret. After a couple of resets, all you need to do is use reverse psychology, and Arceus will jump right into the ball apparently. Hey, here's the bet. What's going to happen first? Am I going to catch Arceus or are you going to get Phoebos? I'm going to catch Arceus apparently. Oh my god, the timing. As soon as I decide to call the game out, I catch it. And with that, I'm now officially done with my full living Dex, caught from scratch and stored in Pokemon Home. To prove that I caught all 905 Pokemon, I was even able to redeem my original Colmagina, which also added one form and meant that I had 197 extra forms altogether towards a bonus challenge that I set myself. Something doesn't feel right though. The new games have released and technically I now don't have a version of every available Pokemon, even if they can't be stored in Pokemon Home just yet. So you know what that means? Redemption round! But this time we're gonna try and do it all before Pokemon Home compatibility is released for Scarlet and Violet. Since it's a new game, the first thing I have to do, obviously, is finish the story. Not breaking into any undiscovered territory there. This will give me access to every area of the region and every Pokemon in them, which should be easy considering my Fuecoco already decided to try and jump straight to its ghost type evolution earlier. I'm sure you've already seen multiple playthroughs by now, so let's just skim the highlights. Like the time I was told to add Tandemos to my team and just walk with it for a while. I'm sure nothing will happen to it and my chat was just messing with me. Just after this happened, I had someone drop in offering a mysterious Pokemon that I hadn't seen or got yet, and they didn't want anything special in return. Fair to say I was curious at this point. So I went and caught 2 random Pokemon and traded with them. It turns out they were giving out the other starters that streamers hadn't picked up for the playthroughs. Shortly after, I decided to take on everyone's favourite businessman, and he was the one that made me realise that Game Freak had an intended order to play this game. I had 3 gym badges up to this point, so I thought I could only have my Pokemon obey me up to level 35. Other than seeing as the Dunsparce for the first time and being surprised. Dunsparce evolution! Dun-dun! What one has Baton Pass? Dash Bun. So what does Dunsparce evolve into? If it isn't Tramper. a bigger Dunsparce. I mean, friggin' hell, it's huge. Let's just call whatever that was surprised. When I got up to a Staraptor, I realised I'd messed up. It was level 36, so I had to either be smart or do some grinding outside the town. So I had one option. I did some grinding and went back for round 2 with a vengeance, which, knowing his team now and having more of an even playing field, even if it was built on the corpses of the other customers, was a bit more of a breeze this time round, and I'd redeemed myself after getting beaten the first time. It took me a second to realise as well. I just noticed Mousehold. That's so weird. They just duplicate. My Tandemos had gotten married, changed its name to Mousehold, and had 2 kids while I was in the middle of my gym match. And that just deserves respect, I've got to be honest. But I didn't want to use it on my team, so it did immediately get boxed. That was an ordeal. So I went on a wee little sightseeing break through Paldea. If you haven't seen the 11th site of Paldea, you really need to. The Morphin Rocks are something everyone needs to experience to believe. Although I may be slightly biased because I found a shiny Mudbray not too long after I saw them. Not too much else interesting really happened, and this took me by surprise because it's the only place in the whole game where you can have a double battle without going online. But the game thought I loved it so much that it decided it was gonna crash before I could save, so I had to do it all again. Too bad it's over, make your way back to the stage sometime, maybe next time we rap battle instead. No, they just guaranteed I'm never coming back. I'm sure you got some scary good adventures ahead, I'll be cheering for you. Now is the question after this, what? Come on, please tell me it. Don't make me do it again. It wasn't hard. I just don't want to do it again. This game is a masterpiece. Nothing wrong with it. Performs perfectly. This wouldn't be the last of my struggles either. The moment I left the town and spotted a TM in the distance, I had to go for it. But I didn't realise that this would be the true gym test, not some stupid rap double battles. And it did test me, for a while. Some might say too long, and this is sped up. The real salt in the wound was that when I finally got what I was going for, it was a fly TM of all things. Moving on, eventually I started finishing the storylines with the Path of Legends being the best. Arvin decided to go and drop all pretenses and just tell me outright that I had to finish the other storylines before he'd let me move on to the post-game. So that's exactly what I did, until I found what I can only assume is a Ocarina of Time Easter egg in the middle of Mesa Gosa, or just a graphical bug. But it's more fun if I imagine it's a really rare Easter egg that only shows up once in a blue moon, like the Mirage Island in Gen 3. Following Arvin's advice, I went and finished up the Starfall Street and Victory Road parts, which opened up the post-game story called The Way Home, and made my way into the crater of Paldea. It's fair to say I had some theories when I went into Area Zero, which it tried to distract me from with Bishop and its lack of knees, but I'm a seasoned veteran of overthinking, and that only meant my ideas got more complicated as I made my way further into the crater. It'll be easier for you to understand once you can see the situation for yourself. She's stuck in the past. Calling it. She's going to be like half, like, just stuck in the rift, only the top half sticking out, and that's why you don't see below on the camera. Yeah, because also brilliant. Professor Sadara messes up, and there she got stuck in the rift. I'm calling it. She's stuck halfway through a portal. It's probably the least likely thing I've called in this game so far. She's half stuck in a portal. Just reaching out, typing on a keyboard and using Skype. Because she's stuck in the past. She doesn't use Discord or Zoom. Only Skype. Maybe AOL Instant Messenger. I'm hello, hello. It's pre-recorded. It's messages from the past. Hello, children. Initiate and restart. She made herself an AI because she went back to the past. So my theory of being half stuck in a portal kind of getting messed with. She's now an AI. Basically, in my previous transmission, there seems to be some signal interference. That's not what that was. He's onto it. She's an AI. I still really wanted to be half stuck in a portal. Hello, children. You've done well. You've done well to make it this far. The structure you see before you is Zero Lab. It's an AI, I knew it. Could still be an AI, just a real lifelike robot. Yep. Unless she's modified herself. I'm afraid that there is something for which I must apologise. I'm not the true professor. No duh. Then who are you? I'm an artificial intelligence. Ha ha ha! I called it. Literally said AI. The professor created, imbued with their memories and knowledge. In short, I'm an AI-powered robot. Ha ha ha! I called it. Not the portal, but I still called it. And I can't believe how close I actually got to what really happened. Although I prefer my half stuck in a portal theory personally. Theories aside, I somehow found a way even deeper into the crater and fought the AI of Arvin's mum twice. But this time, it wasn't because the game crashed. It was actually developer-intended bugs written into the story with their AI. In hindsight, this seems a little too self-aware, but like I said, I'm done with the theories for now. It was in this fight that I first saw Slitherwing and Roaring Moon, and almost immediately in my head, decided that I needed to shiny hunt them. Speaking of realizations, I also couldn't help but notice that once you send out your legendary bike, the fight is heavily scripted and you essentially have protagonist syndrome, which is to say you basically can't lose from this point. Tough to say, you wouldn't feel sad. That seems scripted. And it's gonna get a stupid crown. Maybe? Are they gonna give it like a special form? Nope, it's getting a stupid crown. Although it kind of works for Koraidon, and I feel like It is the only Pokemon they specifically modeled for a crown. Ooh. Oh, it's so scripted. Oh, I hate it. Honestly, it cheapens the ending a bit for me, but I guess with that, I'm done with the game's story and... Oh god, mute the Ed Sheeran song. Like I was saying, I'm done with the story and on to completing the game's Pokedex. Not too much happened, I swear. I was just searching for the Pokemon I needed, finding it, and evolving it if it needed to. I wasn't adding to my living dex at this point. And to throw a positive spin on these games for once in this video, I actually recorded this detail that most people might not even have happen. Because when you evolve a Pokemon in water, like Applin into Appleton, it'll be on a little floaty type thing. But if it evolves into Flapple, it actually removes the floaty since Flapple can fly. Not on too mind blown, but with the rest of these games being the way they are, it honestly took me by surprise. A little less honestly, but what you expect at this point. I lied about nothing happening while I completed the Pokedex. Like the Cuffant that was just chilling, living its best life next to a mud pile in the quarry. I had to stop and take a second look because it seemed like it had jaundice, but yeah, a full-on shiny Cuffant just sitting there waiting to be caught. I'm sure I haven't mentioned it yet, but I streamed a lot of this on Twitch. Not so long after that, keeping the spirit of the season alive, I was traded a shiny Azumarill called Happy Holidays, which is probably the memento from doing this that I've actually used the most. Especially since it ended up being rarely useful in raids once I built it properly. Speaking of keeping up themes, while I was searching for an Hisuian Fracture, I found a shiny Spoink. Just adding another one to the full odds list and finally getting some of that luck that everyone else I was watching seemed to be having. On to different shiny things, and ironically, a lack of polish on them. I was doing some cleanup towards the end of the Pokedex and needed some XP candies for quick levels. So I started doing some raids and very quickly, no, almost immediately, found out how broken they are. Between the broken health bar, lack of camera movement when you terrestrialize, and being stuck on a white screen while the rest of the battle apparently plays out in the background, they're genuinely painful to take part in, and that's if you can find one straight away. On a less game-breaking note, but still definitely breaking some school rules. Tell me if you see what's wrong with this clip. I only spotted it as I exited the school. That's my Dashbin standing in the middle of the school's lobby, and I can't throw any Pokemon out in there if I tried. And trust me, I tried. This wasn't the only time something like this happened either. I had a Naclistac appear in the entrance to Area 0, standing right in front of me, and on top of the teleporter I had to use. Which apparently works for the both of us, because it followed me down into the research station as well. Bugs aside though, the Pokedex is almost finished, and after some catching, and while I was looking for a Bisharp that spawned in a group to evolve my King Gambit, I'll come back to that later, I found just that, except in that group was also a shiny Ponyard. Compared to all the other shiny Pokemon I found doing this challenge, it was maybe the easiest to spot since it's blue instead of red, not just a slight hue change of the original. The last thing left to do is trade for the opposite game's legendary bike and then hunt down the ruinous Pokemon locked behind the seals. With them safely in the boxes, my Pokedex was complete. I got my certificate, my shiny charm, and I had to go catch every new Pokemon from Paldea again so I could add them to my living dex. Something I knew I'd have to do right away was to play through Violet, since I'd need a version of Miraidon in a Pokeball with my name as the OT. My plan for this was to follow a map showing the level order for all the gyms, titans, and team starbases. The starter I picked was going to be my main Pokemon, with a couple extras I'd pick up along the way. The John could be the first addition to the team, out of sheer laziness of not boxing it. Then I'd add Sandile, since I'd seen some of the grinding methods for money and thought that if it can take on some of the strongest trainers in the game in its final form, without fainting and using only one move, it'd be a good backup Pokemon to have. I decided before doing too many badges to explore most of the region and unlock all of the fly points I'd need. This could be an issue, but there was a little trick going around known as backwards long jumping. This isn't new information, but I'm pointing it out because without it, I would have made my way through the cave heading to Alphanada and found a shiny Toxtricity, teasing me and my extremely underleveled Quaxley. So I did what any good trainer would do. I shoved as many candies as I could find in my pockets down its throat until it evolved into Quaxwell. Then with no hesitation, I ran into it, only then realising I had minimal Pokeballs on me since I wasn't anticipating catching many Pokemon in this playthrough. Thankfully though, it eventually stayed in the Pokeball, and I had yet another shiny to add to my collection. Up to now, I tried to do as little grinding as possible before each badge, but as you'd expect, it was unavoidable. So I headed north to the Fairy type Team Starbase, made a ham sandwich, and started chewing through chances. Doing this got my Lechonk to evolve into Oinkologne, and Sandile to evolve into Krokorok and then Crocodile. With my team all ready and set to go, it was finally time to power through the rest of the 18 badges I had left to do, with the only eventful moment being my Miraidon randomly showing as shiny during the Glacido gym trial. Apparently this happened to more than just me, and it's actually just an unused texture for a snow-covered Miraidon. Then it was just a case of playing through the story as he knew, except this time Arvin had an absent dad instead of a mum, who is arguably better because he gave him a new future bike that no one else could get, instead of sending him out on an old broken bike while he had to watch everyone else riding the newer version. It also meant finishing all the parts again and reliving that whole trauma with Arvin a second time. After that, my second playthrough was over and I was ready for it this time. I think I might be safe. With that over with, I made my way back into the depths of Area Zero to catch the extra available Miraidon. While I was in Area Zero, I also picked up the Future Paradox Pokemon exclusive to Violet. Now, the only thing left for this game was to basically do a victory lap of the region, pulling out all of the stakes and catching duplicates of the ruinous Pokemon from my living decks. The last part of the challenge is finally here, and all I need to do is catch all 105 new Pokemon introduced in the Paldea region. This was nothing compared to the 905 Pokemon I'd already collected, but as Game Freak is known to do, and they really doubled down on it with these games, there were some new and, let's just say, different evolution methods in these games. Going over some of the more interesting Pokemon in order, we'll start with the community's favourite round boy Lechonk. Its evolved form Oinkologne as a gender variation, which I never noticed at first somehow, but once you see them side by side, it's quite obvious. Next is this generation's Pika clone that just learns to walk properly, then after it takes 1,000 steps in the overworld and levels up, it grows more hair? Sure, I guess that counts as an evolution. The same evolution method also applies to Bramblin into Bramblegast and Rellor into Rabska. I've already been over Tandemaus. The only thing I've learned since then is that it evolves into Mousehold at level 25 and not just after being in your party for a specified amount of time. Squawkabilly doesn't evolve, but it does have 4 different colours to collect, with the white variant being the rarest of them all. Nothing too bad though, and still has nothing on collecting every colour for every evolution in the Flabébé line. Charcadet's where things get interesting with the new additions in these games. Pokemon now drop materials when they're caught or defeated. This is important to note since you need either 10 Sinistea chips to trade for the Malicious Armour, which evolves Charcadet into Ceruledge, or 10 Bronzor fragments to trade for the Auspicious Armour, which evolves it into Armarouge. Obviously, I'm gonna need both, so I had to jump into my other save quickly and trade the item over to get Ceruledge in Scarlet. Tauros technically isn't a new Pokemon, but it is a new form in Paldea, and it also comes with 2 other forms which are version exclusive. The Fire Breed Tauros is exclusive to Scarlet, and the Water Breed is exclusive to Violet. These can be hard to come by, but like with the other harder Pokemon in this region, just eat the right sandwich, and with the right encounter power, shouldn't have any issues. Whoop has also got a Paldean form, but like the Zigzagoon line in Galar, it was given a regional evolution as well. And it's possibly my favourite evolution in the entire series. Clodsire is just the best boy you could ever need, and it's actually just an overall good Pokemon to use in a casual playthrough as well. Toedscool just evolves by level into Toedscruel. Nothing special there, but how could I not mention it? It is known as a regional adaptation, which is completely different to a regional form obviously. And so are Wiglet and Wugtrio, which evolve by level as well. Finizen is needlessly complicated, given the minor changes in its base form. You need to connect with someone using a Union Circle feature, and as long as your Finizen is level 38 or above, the next time it levels up, it'll evolve. One of the more interesting Pokemon of this generation is Tatsugiri. It has 3 different colours you can collect, but they're not just different for no reason. Depending on its colour, if you send it out in a battle with Dondozo, it'll jump into its mouth and change the effect of its order up move. Shame double battles are only in a very small section of the game unless you want to go online and play competitively. Primeape got a regional evolution in these games. Kind of. So it doesn't evolve. It more just sort of gets so angry it dies on the spot. It'll evolve into Annihilate if you use its new move Rage Fist 20 times. Emphasis on use though. The move doesn't even have to connect with the target to count towards the total. So they made this evolution complicated, then accidentally easier due to an oversight. Girafarig has something kinda similar, but it's more like when they added evolutions to existing Pokemon in Gen 4. It'll try and learn a new move called Twin Beam at level 32, and as long as it knows the move, after it levels up, it'll evolve into Farigiraf. The Dunsparce is the same, except for the fact that it needs to know the move Hyper Drill to evolve. Coming back to King Gambit, we're really going off the deep end with this one. I don't even know how anyone figured this out in the first place. If you have a Bisharp, fight and defeat another Bisharp 3 times, it'll evolve. But they can't just be any Bisharp, no. They have to be a Bisharp that spawn in packs of Pawniard, since they'll be holding an item called the Leader's Crest. Once you figured out and did that, then, and only then, will it evolve into King Gambit. I've already been over the Paradox Pokemon. All I had to do was catch duplicates of the past versions I already had, or encounter a shiny Sandy Shocks without even realising it. Be thankful that my shiny paranoia made me go back and check it, and finally catch it after I got over, pardon the pun, the shock. I've already been over Miraidon, the Ruinous Pokemon, and the future Paradox Pokemon in my Violet playthrough, so the only Pokemon left to catch is Gimmighoul. By collecting 999 coins, I could evolve it into Goldengo. But no, the last Pokemon wouldn't be that simple, would it? For those who don't know, the chest form Gimmighoul gives the most coins when you defeat them, but they don't respawn, so after evolving my original Goldengo and going for a second, I was at around 839 or so coins. This is deceptive because I only had the respawning Roman Gimmighoul left to collect coins from. On average, from my experience, they drop between 1 and 10 coins. I can't put into words the sheer relief I had when I found the last Gimmighoul and I could evolve it into Goldengo. But there are still 2 forms I just can't leave, especially since they were implemented as a joke and I'm more than willing to commit to a bit. We're in the bonus round now, and you might remember that I mentioned Dunsparce as a new evolution called the Dunsparce. Well, if you pay close attention, you'll notice they just added a segment to its original form and gave it a bigger tail basically. And if you pay even more attention during the final battle with Nemona, you'll see that here the Dunsparce has one more segment than all the others you've seen so far. With this info and some experiential research, people worked out that it's roughly a 1 in 100 chance for a Dunsparce to evolve into its 3-segment form. Add this on top of the fact that I'm obviously going for a male 3-segment to Dunsparce, so the odds double to a 1 in 200 chance since it has a 50-50 gender ratio. Now let's look at the odds to find a shiny Pokemon. With the boosted odds of the shiny charm, I have a 1 in 2044 odds, so theoretically, I should find the form I want way before I find the shiny. So someone tell me how I found 3 shinies before even 1 3-segment to Dunsparce. Not even male, just a 3-segment form. I even found a random shiny Sunflora roaming in the background while I was doing this, which means that I actually have 4 shinies before I have 1 3-segment appear. That's a 0.0000 whatever it says on screen chance of happening, which for reference, 1 in 200 is a 0.5% chance. I evolved so many and kept the boxes filled with 2-segment to Dunsparce just so you can see how bad my odds were. which is why you can see how happy I was to finally have it appear on the screen. Oh yes! Oh, that took too many. Okay. I couldn't be completely happy though, because the other rare form I had to hunt for was a Mousehold, and more specifically the family of 3 form. That is, again, a 1 in 100 chance. The only upside is that Mousehold doesn't have a gender, so I just had to catch a load and hope for the best. And Karma must have come back around, because after I caught my first batch, I found one in the second set of evolutions. Oh, 3 form right there. Then, while I was finishing up the batch of Tandemaus I caught, I actually had another family of 3 appear for me. And with that done, no more fake outs. I'm actually done for this video, and it's time to wrap everything up. Overall, I have 1,008 species of Pokemon, with 209 forms towards my bonus goal. This means that my living dex is complete, and the only thing stopping it from being considered a form dex is the lack of mana gender variations added in from Gen 1 to 4, and 62 forms of alchemy that are available. I'm so close to having a form dex that I'm probably going to get to adding these in at some point. Desexisting my dex, if that's even a thing, and literally adding a cherry on top. So if you're interested and you've made it this far, do all the usual stuff, like, subscribe, go follow the Twitch channel to see me work through these bonus challenges, and I'll catch you later. And before I get any comments, I've also got Walk and Wake, Iron Leaves, and Roman Form Gimme Ghoul in Pokemon Go. Okay, actually done this time. Bye.